the song.
Are you familiar with John Brown's Body?
I know John Brown. I don't know John Brown's body.
So, that makes it sound like you're denying him.
Is he behind the curtain right now? Is this Love is Blind but History Edition?
We had a high school teacher. He was our science teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And so he didn't know about John Brown. And we were like, dude, you look like just like John Brown.
Oh.
And he was like, he kind of had this vibe of like, are you making fun of me and how I look?
Right.
But then we're like, no, John Brown started or tried to start a slave insurrection in like the 1850s, I think.
Yeah,
it didn't work. You know what's funny? Because he asked like no black people about it, right? he kind of had respect because he literally lost his life trying to fight against slavery.
Right.
When a lot of white people are like, hey, well, it's not. I don't like it, but I don't want to rock the boat.
Right.
But he did have sort of a white savior thing going on.
It was very like big complex, but then I'm just imagining the black slaves looking at it afterwards. They're like, well, he's got the spirit.
Because just a quick for the listeners, John Brown's attempted rebellion, basically in the 1850s, before the Civil War. He was a white guy, and he was like, listen, I hate slavery so much, and I'm not one of these gradual anti-slavery people, like let's end slavery in good time, like Lincoln was, right? He was more of like slavery is so evil that it needs to end right now, which in hindsight, it sounds like a very reasonable.
It
sounds so very reasonable,
right?
But in the 1850s, everyone's like, "You're crazy."
Yeah, this guy's a little nuts. Yeah. He's gonna do this right now.
But to be fair, he also was nuts,
right?
Because he had this very, I don't know what denomination of Christianity was, but very almost like. Very close to having snakes bite him, sort of energy.
A very religious fervor to it, which, can be interpreted in modern, even more ancient contexts, where sometimes more religious people take on this huge undertaking because they see it as an act of God and something they must undertake. And there's nothing to answer to at that point. So it's like, he is going to take up arms and do this because he believes it to be righteous. And sometimes they are righteous, sometimes they're not. But it leads to, the John Brown's actions and the insurrection, so to speak.
A funny piece of trivia is that 19 guys fought with John Brown, and 19 guys, shall we say, fought on September 11, 2001.
Interesting.
Yeah.
How does that work out? What's the inner conspiracy here?
You know what? I just said it as it's kind of a funny coincidence, but statistically, one person will have heard that sentence, and now they're going down a rabbit hole, and they're going to buy some fertilizer and a van.
My goal for this podcast is to create one conspiracy theorist, one way or another, whether it be me, you, or one of the listeners. So we're on our way. I'm very happy to hear that.
So John Brown, he had a group of mostly white, but he did have some black people,
right?
Mostly free black people from the North, but they were like, we're going to attack this armory in modern day West Virginia. At the time, it was part of Virginia. And he was like, we're going to steal all the guns, and then we're going to bring the guns to the slaves. And then the slaves will be like, dude, it's time for an insurrection. You know what I mean? But they started doing that. And all of the slaves were like, no.
What do you mean I need to fight a war now? What?
Well, they were like, this is stupid.
Because it's like you're just arming people who have no or very little knowledge of guns right now to be like, now this is going to start a whole war.
Yeah.
Like that's not a small undertaking.
I sort of think that maybe John Brown knew it was going to not work, but he was like, because he was so religious, he was like, dude, I want to be a fucking martyr right now.
In a sense, martyr, or there is sometimes a belief of God is on my side, I will not be hurt, or something like that.
Oh yeah.
Which again is very historically, this is not the first time someone has thought that in human history. Be like, God's on my side, I can't lose. So unfortunately, in this case, it ended up in John Brown being surrounded inside of the armory. As federal agents also like basically close in and be like, hey, this guy took over a U.S. armory. So he wasn't necessarily even fighting the people that he had a huge, like he fought a system, but he didn't
Right.
fight the actual slave owners or the
Right.
people like espousing the glory of chattel slavery. Like it
Right.
was just, you know, the federal government at that point, which for better or for worse was supporting the system in a way, but it's not,
Yeah.
it didn't go about the way that I think he was hoping it would with his opponent and seeing how things would go about.
And the guy leading the army to surround the armory, Robert E. Lee.
Why? I
Isn't
did
that
not
crazy?
know that. Oh my God.
There's so many funny little things like that.
That's an anime twist right there. All right. I have an anime to pitch to the nearest studio. I have to go.
John Brown, because John Brown's sons participated in the raid, and one of them was shot and died, but he didn't die right away, and he was crying because I imagine getting shot is uncomfortable. And John Brown was like, "Stop crying, die like a man." I'm like, dude, John Brown, you were so intense, dude.
Wow. John Brown really bringing out that toxic masculinity. How could you? Wow. Men
That's
aren't
why-
allowed to cry, I guess, John Brown.
That's why he
huh?
hated slavery so much. He's like, you're a dude that's seriously going to own another dude. That's gay as hell, dude. Come on. What are you doing?
Frat President John Brown out here.
So John Brown's Body, the song, was
Yeah.
created because there was a Union regiment that came out of Boston. And there was a guy, my understanding is he was sort of like a goofy looking, like kind of chubby, and he just looked silly with his backpack, and he was kind of waddling with his backpack, and his name happened to be John Brown, which was just funny.
Right.
It's like now if you were like in a training camp as a soldier, like basic training, and there was a guy named John Cena.
Yeah.
You're like, how are you not going to joke about that? So they started singing John Brown's Body lies a moldering in the grave, which eventually morphed into Mine Eyes Have Seen the Glory of the Coming of the Lord.
Yeah.
But they would sing that song as a joke, and then those guys went to battle and they sang that song, and not because they love John Brown, but it's like an inside joke. But that really upset Confederate soldiers to be singing about John Brown. So they were like, "Oh well, if we control the Confederate soldiers,
Right.
that's wonderful."
Right.
That's a great thing that we could do. And then it morphed into, because they would actually like liberate plantations, right? And then after 1863, black people could fight in the army, and then they're fighting alongside black people, witnessing their bravery.
Right.
So it turned into this weird thing where at first they were singing the song as a joke, and then by the end of the war, they were like, we actually unironically love John Brown.
Yeah. And then you could see the evolution just through like, I think I read Team of Rivals, which is a great book. It's very thick. It's not like an easy, like go at it read.
Damn, it thick.